I see artificial intelligence, really that whole movement benefiting India tremendously. But we have a natural alliance. The book makes the point that we need to build bridges to India. The U.S. needs to build bridges to India. And the particular bridge I talked about to you before is setting up the bone marrow transplant registry, what I call health security. But you need, and the trade area, what I would do is, you remember in the old days, India had what they called the imperial preference. Then India had GSP treatment, generalized system of preference, duty-free treatment from the U.S., and the U.S. dumped that. And I would actually have India go back to duty-free treatment, and I would set up what I call the American preference on trade. And we need to build that bridge on trade and have a better, deeper trade relationship. It's really not as big as it should be, given the size of both markets. And on the investment side, I would have a new treaty, a bilateral investment treaty, that would also promote investment on both sides.
So good. I think that's naturally happening. There are concerns that if there is a democratic president, the dynamics may be different. If there is a Republican president, the dynamics may be different. But I think India and America are long-term partners. Their interests are intertwined.
Absolutely.
And you know, the American policy will be stable, and the American president, whoever it is, will continue to build on the relationship that India has with America historically. Now, I'll come to your Give Life Foundation, where you set up a bone marrow registry. I must tell you, in 1982, I was very young. I watched this movie called Dard Ka Rishta. Dard Ka Rishta. And the movie was, the plot was, Sunil Dutt was in it. And the plot was a child needed a bone marrow transplant. That's the first time I got to know what a bone marrow transplant was. And I'll come to, it's a very important issue, but at that point, let me bring in Dr. Sanjna John. Dr. Sanjna John, you're doing a lot of work on the H2O movement, and while his is, you know, donate a marrow, yours is save the water. You know, water is in scarcity in India. Water is also a communicator of diseases. There is paucity of clean drinking potable water. So give a sense of how did you come to identify H2O, movement as a significant initiative to make impact.
Good evening, Dr. Batra. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us, and thank you, audience. It's such a wonderful day. Today being the Dasara, it's the day where I think the evil gets conquered by the positive. And when I say positive, it's about doing good. When I started with H2O movement, I realized that the world needs so many things. We talk about education, we talk about food, we talk about women empowerment, but considering we have all these things, we have two fundamental things. One is air, which none of us no being can live without. Second is water. And we are seeing that the scarcity is growing to the extent where the glaciers are melting. I think the last glacier just melted in Argentina, if I'm not mistaken. It is disastrous. And you have no idea, because I have traveled around to see how colossal this problem is, and it's magnified, especially in India, because of our population. We are 1/3 the size of the United States, with I think almost 4 times the population, the largest in the world, as Dr. Botvisher just mentioned. So we are talking about all this development, technology, movement, reform. But where are we going to go if we don't have water?
Yeah, with the quality of life in an urban city, we're in October in Delhi, and in a neighboring state every year there is stubble burning. So we've reduced the issue, and that polluted air travels to Delhi, and the PMI is about 300 on an average, sometimes goes to 400, some days it goes to 600, but 300 for almost 45 days. It causes health issues for children, for elderly, or people who are dealing with breathing, So really, if the air is going to be bad, if water is going to be bad, then what are we going to do with our gut health and with our... So it's an important issue, but what are you doing to be able to bring awareness and to be able to provide a solution?
So that's why Give Life Foundation, which is Dr. Bart Fisher's organization, was doing bone marrow. And I said, anything related to health, the fundamental is water, which made a very, I would say, great parallel to what we were working on. And the movement is not just awareness, which we have been. We have been creating awareness amongst the youth, pan-India. We had walks with 50,000 students in Chandigarh, in Graphic Era, Dehradun, different universities, IIT. But I realized, but what are we going to do about it, just like you said? So to bring health in was very important because people understood health more than water. Because they're like, water is there because they're buying water. So we felt that the way to understand or make them understand is by integrating the two together. And now we're looking at creating 776 water holes in every district of India with fruit trees around it. Because more than humans, it's the animals with the voiceless. We can buy. What will they do? So all these planning that is currently on water is not really substantial to support the system, especially the growth, the surge that India is currently seeing. So we're trying to create a parallel body to create the water holes, to make sure rainwater conservation is there, and above all, make people realize how to save water. Most people, they run the taps when they're shaving. How much water is lost? They run the tap while they're brushing. Again, flushing. You know, these are small things, but it goes a long way. And if recycled water can be used, there, you are saving. So it's like you say, a penny saved is...
Penny, huh?
Yes. So this is where we're trying to integrate and create a huge awareness. And it's also a movie. H2O movement is a movie which was acknowledged by our Honorable Prime Minister. And I'm hoping, Shekhawat when Minister was, he was a Minister for Water. You know, so we have good people. Bisleri has come on board because they are hugely into propagating the water movement. And one of the main things is glass bottles. Because they've said the plastic bottles are actually hazardous to health, especially when you keep the plastic in the heat. That's one of the main causes for cancer. So we're trying to create the awareness why good drinking water is important and how we can actually give India, every person or every living person body, water. That's the movement.
Dr. Bart Fisher, you explained to me how in the US, by establishing the bone marrow registry, you were able to impact multiple lives.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of how big the issue is and what is the impact that the Give Life Foundation has had?
Yes, the bone marrow registry in the U.S., the story is we have 37 million HLA marrow type donors, voluntary donors in the registry, half of them in America and half overseas. So far off the registry, we've had 100,000 matches. So we do the bone marrow transplants based on those matches. Looking at the population, again, I can do 5 times as many with India, given the population here, if we have the registry set up here. Now, the diseases, they're called blood cancers that are attacked, that the registry is a solution for. Leukemia, aplastic anemia. In India, a big disease is thalassemia. That hardly exists in the United States, but here it's a big deal. And it's also cured with a bone marrow transplant. So the impact we can have globally is huge. We can save 500,000 lives a year. The idea is the campaign we're running is called Swab for Life. It's a swab. Then you're in the registry. We can take that off the swab and type it and test it in a lab, and we'll learn a lot of things, including the marrow. Marrow is very complex. Blood has 4 types. Marrow has thousands of types. And so you need a huge registry. And India needs a huge registry because of the ethnic diversity of so many different types of ethnic people that you have to find. You're always looking for a cousin. So you need a massive registry here. India needs a registry of 80 million HLA marrow type people. It has around 6 million now, which is tiny compared to the need. And the idea I have is that if we combine the registry information with artificial intelligence, we'll learn a lot more. And be able to use the registry for many more things. For example, we now know we can use the stem cells for breast cancer cure, for brain cancer cure. It just goes on and on. So we have a solution actually in search of problems at this point. And so we're all one human family at the end of the day. So there's no reason for the stem cells not to go around the world and cure diseases all over the world. So I'm excited, but India has been the missing piece. It really hasn't been here. It should be here. And given the quality of the doctors and the hospitals you have, we have the infrastructure and the ability to do it here. So we see it as a big global movement, but the campaign is swab for life, just a swab and you're in. Used to have to draw blood, one drop of blood. People don't like needles. I don't like needles. So, but here you just swab, and it's so easy to get in the registry. In the old days, you have to draw, if you found a match, you draw the marrow from the hip bone. Now you can take the stem cells right out of the peripheral blood. So it's very easy to both get in the registry, and if you're a match, be a donor. And it's probably the one chance in your life you'll have to save a life. So a lot of people want to do it once they know about it. The real problem is awareness. People really aren't aware of how simple it is to save a life. And so it's Give Life Foundation's project. I started the registry in the United States in 1983. It's been very successful. It works. And we get funding also from the federal government in the U.S. because it's viewed as important to have equal access to medical care. Make sure African Americans, Hispanics, and other minorities are equally in the registry. So, but India has the infrastructure to be able to do it and should do it. So that's why I came. And I came last year to Bangalore to speak about this. And now we're doing, with Sanjana, a partnership. And it's a health-based partnership with water, quality, and water's fundamental, foundation of life, but so are stem cells. And so that's the game we're working on.
And what would it take to be able to set up this, registry in India? What are the resources to be able to do it? Of course, it's about awareness. It's about resources to be able to collect it,
Yes.
technology. So what is the kind of investment?
Yeah, there's
what
a
is the
lot
kind
there,
of
yeah.
donations?
Okay, the logistics are daunting. You have to get the marrow, get the swab, and then you have to take it to a lab and get it tested. And then you have to have the ability to deliver it if there's a match, So the couriers, we now have couriers, half our business in the United States is overseas. So we get German marrows coming in and Shanghai, Chinese Americans, marrows from Shanghai for Chinese Americans. So the logistics are daunting to get the marrow once you find a match. And so it'll take a lot of money, but we're approaching foundations in India and private donors and hospital chains. Because if you're in the hospital, you're sort of a captive audience, you're there. So, but the fundamental issue is not money, it's awareness. Just knowing that you can do it, that people will go do it.
Fantastic. Dr. Sanjana John, clearly there is we talk of the SDGs, the 16 SDGs. India possibly was made for SDGs, so to say. In almost all the SDGs, we could make an impact, right, Ajit? There are lots of other people that are doing good work in the water domain or related domains. Of course, the Waterman of India, Rajendra ji, has done great work setting the number of ponds and the water bodies and doing work on conserving water, and agriculture is a very big area in terms of water usage. What are your plans to be able to make impact? I was in part of a youth startup challenge where there was a startup which is focusing on awareness. They built an IoT device which you put on you install in your home, it tells you, it stops the water through sensors if you're not close by. It tells you that you're using more water while you're shaving or you're brushing or when you're taking a shower. And all that small saving adds up to a lot, So what are you doing tangibly to be able to make a difference, to make an impact, or collaborate with people who are already doing a lot in the water domain?
That's actually the best thing that you could give people is the awareness that they are doing something wrong. Because most people don't even realize that when they are shaving, the water is being lost. This is a huge issue because when I interact with children, the youth are the best bodies to interact with because they can change things faster. They adapt quicker. So every time I interact with students in schools or colleges, I ask them, the first thing is, how many of you brush your teeth? And all of them do. How many of you shut the tap while you brush your teeth? And most of them don't. So you kind of see, even though there is education, the kind of education needed is not just awareness in what you do for your day-to-day physical, betterment or education. How you can be a better human being to save your environment is a huge movement. So when we talk about sustainability, which is I think all over the world today, sustainability is huge. The children have to be taught how to be sustainable, how to be that person to lead to the future where they have the resources they need. So this has to be taught from schools, and I think it's important that this kind of education starts in school. And I love the fact that you asked about showers. Yes, I don't know if you've seen in Emirates when you take the shower, it shuts. It shows you it's halfway. It gives you only the amount of water required. Maybe that's needed. And definitely the flushing. In all hotels, in public units, they should make it mandatory. Why are we flushing good, drinkable, usable water down the drain? Why can't we just use recycled water? So creating these kind of, not just the awareness, but the implementation in these things are absolutely necessary, and we are working towards that. PVR Inox has come forward to partner support because they are great to get the message across. So we're reaching out to celebrities because again, when they speak, people listen. So we have a plan and a game plan which goes step by step. So this is, I would say, step one. We're taking baby steps, but we'll take bigger strides as we go forward.
Dr. Bart Fisher, you were there when Dr. Deepak Chopra was speaking.
Yes.
We spoke about the wars in Ukraine. We spoke about the war in Middle East.
Yes.
It's very volatile there. Because of the US election, maybe for some weeks, nothing may happen. But who knows what happens after 5th November? Right? In all this in the last few months, there is a part of the world where there has been huge loss of lives. And you know that part of the world really well, Sudan. And you've done a lot of work in Sudan. Yes. Give our audience a sense of why is Sudan important?
I represented the country of Sudan for 7 years, from 2011 to 2017, on the issue of sanctions. Sudan has a lot of oil. Sudan, unfortunately, harbored Osama bin Laden, and so the U.S. had sanctions against Sudan. But over time, I thought it would be a good thing if we could bring Sudan back into the family of nations. And after 2017, the agreement was it'd be a 3-year transition government, half civilian, half military, at the end of which the generals, the military, would turn the government over to civilians. Well, 1 month before the 3 years was up, the generals decided not to do that. And the military wouldn't let go, and the whole place exploded again in civil war. So where it is to this day, as is South Sudan, which is a separate country underneath of 11 million people. So it's important, Sudan has always been important as a gateway to Africa. Its location is important in terms of Red Sea, national security, and so we did make progress to a point. And it's also, the Horn of Africa is important from a strategic standpoint. And eventually, the Abraham Accords, we had the Emirates, along with Sudan finally, making deals with Israel. This was one of the really good things Trump did, the Abraham Accords, to try to solve the Middle East issue. He had countries make bilateral arrangements with Israel, And they were right on the point of the cusp of making one with Saudi Arabia when Hamas attacked, and that's why Hamas attacked. They wanted to upend all the progress that had been made over the last 5 years. So it's not just Sudan, it's Ethiopia is a mess also. They have rebels, and so the Horn of Africa is very chaotic and has strategic significance.
The number
But
of
mainly
people that
it's oil. You know.
But the number of people that have died in Sudan,
The genocide in Darfur is
Huge.
terrible, and it's actually a disaster that with no end in sight, and it
Does
to me it's
human-
very sad.
does human life matter still?
Well, it's all about money. The government and the rebels each have a different claim to different assets like gold or oil, and so the rebels have been financed by the Emirates and the government by other parties. So it's about resources and the control of resources in Africa. So there's a whole race for these resources in Africa. We talked about that before. And I call them, that's the second trade war. The first war we talked about was trade in goods. Second is trade in commodities. The strategic and critical minerals that Africa has are like lithium, cobalt, copper, that go into EVs and the EV electric vehicle batteries. And so China now controls dominantly the production of, say, cobalt, lithium, and the idea is to, the U.S. is losing Africa. I mean, it's unfortunate. China is winning that battle, but that's the second trade battle is going on right now in Africa on these minerals. Who's going to get the minerals for the electric vehicles and the batteries? A third one no one is talking about is in space. I think space you'll see a lot of space wars because you'll have manufacturing in a zero-free and a gravity-free environment that you can do things you can't do on Earth, and pure air and a gravity-free environment. You'll have, so they're studying that in India, in Hyderabad, at the institute I went at. So, yeah, Sudan's a mess. Sure, Ethiopia's a mess, Horn of Africa. And, of course, you have, compounding all that, Israel and Gaza, and now into Lebanon. So it's a very dangerous time. In my mind, it's the most dangerous time in the world since World War II. And it's the most dangerous time in the U.S. since the Civil War, our Civil War, because who knows what happens if Trump loses and doesn't accept the results of the elections, you'd have another insurrection. So we're living in a very dangerous time here. And genocide in Sudan is one of the issues. And no one talks about it, in a way, because it's overshadowed by the other
Yeah, and I
problems that
keep
are
saying that
getting more
it
publicity.
matters if you're rich. And you know, this isn't one of the Indian religious texts, but I'll translate it in English. You know, we have relative morality. If we kill a lizard, it's okay. But if I kill a butterfly, it's not okay. Both are living beings. Come to think of it, a lizard is a living being, and so is a butterfly. My daughter would be okay if I killed a lizard. She'd not be okay if I killed a butterfly. Possibly she'll not be okay killing anyone, but I'm just trying to make a point. You know, before I ask Dr. Sanjay on my last question, I want to ask you my last question. See, you started as a lawyer, right?
Lawyer, not liar. Lawyer.
That's Trump.
That came later.
That's Trump. That's his middle name. Trump, liar. Donald.
You said that, I didn't.
It's okay, I'm not an American voter. I have a 10-year multiple entry visa already. So that's okay. Doesn't matter. Sharmaji, good to see you. He's also a member of the National Press Club in Washington. Mr. Rakesh Sharma is the immediate past president of the Indian Newspaper Society.
Very good.
Yeah, he's, till 20 days he was the president. Anyway, so you started as a lawyer?
I did. I'm still a lawyer. I still practice.
Yes. And then you took on these humanitarian issues.
I did.
Give us a sense of, you wrote a book, you're doing this bone marrow registry. How do you make sure that you're able to do justice to everything you do?
How do I make sure that?
You do justice to everything you do.
Oh, great question. I don't sleep a lot.
That's not good.
Deepak Chopra, yeah, I was listening carefully to, I need my sleep. Yeah, but I think it's a good question. You make priorities in your life, you know. And Hillel once said, "He who saves one life saves the world." And I operate that way. Each client, then I do my best. And I would lay my body on the railroad tracks for each client. That's the commitment you make to a client. So it's a balancing of, you have to get priorities on your time, obviously. But I like to practice because I learn. John Crichton once said, "I write to learn." I practice to learn. And I learn, like on space. I have space clients now. I'm learning all about space. You learn, each thing is a challenge, but basically you want to know more about the subject than anybody else so that you can make your case. And you're an advocate. Lawyers are advocates. And when my main cases are at the U.S. International Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. So I have to know more than the commissioners when I argue about a product or commodity or industry. So each case is a study in microeconomics. And you have to learn each sector as you go. So I try to learn as much as I can. And then do the best I can. But it's a matter of saying what becomes important to you. The issue on the registry became important to me when my son got aplastic anemia in 1983, and there was no registry, and he couldn't find a match. So I said, we're going to change that. So for the next person, we set it up because of my son. And I think I was a member of the Boy Scouts of America. I don't know if you've heard of them, but that's a big deal. And their motto is this: always leave your campsite cleaner than the way you found it. And that's a good life motto, and that's the way I've tried to live. So you do what you can to help when you see a problem. We're just in Nandi Hills. She can tell the story. We're going to get Nandi Hills to be a World Heritage Site that's in the process of being degraded. It's an environmental disaster. And I just took one look at it and I said, well, this is what we need to do, and we'll do it. So I just look at problems and try to solve them.
And how does it feel to be nominated for a Nobel Prize?
That came about through a member of the Swedish, Norwegian parliaments. They're allowed to do that. So it just came to notice that we were saving lives, and they took an interest in that. Yeah.
I know as a Swedish member of parliament, I think I can get nominated for Nobel Prize. Second one is a joke, first one is not. I recently met Himanshu Gulati. I don't know if you know Dr. Himanshu Gulati, the member of the parliament in Sweden. His parents are doctors.
We can work on that.
This again happens through God's wish, but keep doing the good work, Dr. John. My last question to you. Anything that you plan to do, you make goals, you put numbers, you put milestones, you take the first step. What are the milestones you set up for your foundation that you plan to achieve in the next 12, 24 months?
I personally feel that he plans things for us. I never planned the things that I'm doing today. What I had thought of are definitely not what I'm doing today. So I always tell, and this is my connect with whatever the force is, that don't give me what I think is best for me. Give me what you know is best for me. And I truly believe in that. So I'm here to live my life, not just for me. I enjoy, I'm good, I'm happy. But if I'm able to do something for others and go, and not just for human beings, but for the voiceless. I always think that they are the voiceless, and I want to stand up for them, which is why the water issue, when I saw animals being killed, animals dying of not having a drop of water. And I realized they come from their abode into the mainland because we have deprived them of their resources. So these kind of things, I don't know, somehow having lived in New York in a concrete jungle, I never thought I was going to come back to India for whatever reason, see things and see where I could be of better utility or use. And over the years, I've seen, and people ask me, so what do you work on? And I always tell them, it's like a body. You have different parts of the body. Are you just gonna just look at your eyes or your nose? It's a body. And this whole world, as we see it, is a whole body. And whatever, wherever, however, that's what I plan to. And hopefully, one of the main things that I would like to do is make sure that there is water for all. And for that, I'm just a little, I would say, spot out there. But when you get, amazing people like Dr. Bart Fisher, like you, Dr. Anurag Batra, and people that we have connects with, when people come together, that's when the movement becomes a movement.
Gratitude to you, Dr. Sanya John, for doing what you do. Gratitude to you, Dr. Bart Fisher. And I'm sure when the objective is selfless, God gives you solutions, ideas, partners, and the will to carry on. So wish you luck in your endeavors and on your partnership for Save the Life Foundation and H2O Foundation. We have some eminent people in the audience. We can take 3-4 questions. If you have questions, we can get mics to Mr. Amin. Anybody has a question? Mr. Dadu wants to ask. You can take one.
Then we'll get the gentleman there. I know you, I don't know the gentleman.
You mind if I sit and ask because there aren't too many people? Dr. Bart, I have 3 questions for you, and Dr. John, 1.
How many wives do you have? One?
Sorry?
The jokes, okay. You always have 3 questions.
I have too many ideas, I can't help it. I wrote a book called 100 Ideas to Improve Governance in India.
I know.
So every time you trigger me, I'll have an idea. So the first one, Dr. Bhatt, it's a difficult question, it's a historical question, it's a data-based question. Our 2 leaders decided to have trade between us of $500 billion 7-8 years ago. Between US and India-US trade target, I'll repeat that, India-US trade target set up by your president and our prime minister 8 years ago, 2017 I'm talking about, was $500 billion in 5 years. Today, as we sit here, it's $125 billion, 25% of that. Now, when we talk big, when we talk about the large number of meetings which are happening in Washington, D.C. and India every day, top-level officials coming, I fail to understand why we have not even touched the tip of the iceberg and are still at 25% of that target. You've been trade commissioner, and that's why I thought I'll ask you this question. Number 2, our Prime Minister goes to meet Mr. Biden for Quad last week. And just before he meets him, the President meets a Khalistani terrorist and creates trouble for us. Now, if you send contradictory signals, how can India-US trade relationship actually improve? On paper it will, but how will it actually improve? Then you pressurize IMF, and IMF gives a huge loan to Pakistan again, when it knows that $400 million of the loan given earlier was pocketed. So the point I'm trying to make is, US geopolitics between India and Pakistan and for itself is not logical, is not meaningful. How can you prevent that? And my third question relating to China is that China has a foreign exchange reserve of $3 trillion. It is dumping goods all over the world. You talk about saving USA from China. How do you save the rest of the world from China? It has $3 trillion of reserves. It doesn't mind subsidizing anything. It sells goods at less than cost price. I was Director General Anti-Dumping for India, and I can tell you they sell at less than marginal cost because they are heavily subsidized. Now, how do you handle these huge problems with respect to India, with respect to China, with respect to Pakistan?
Have you watched this movie called Charlie Wilson's War? Have you watched this movie called Charlie Wilson's War? Charlie Wilson's War. No? It's about Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. Tom Hanks.
On the last question, it's a good question because it's not just U.S. where China is dumping or subsidizing IPR, intellectual property, knocking off patents, trademarks, copyrights. It's not just the U.S., it's other countries. So that was the whole idea of the WTO, the World Trade Organization, that China would play by the rules. So they haven't. So what you have to do is each country has to bring the trade cases under their own laws. Like India has to bring dumping cases against China. If India thinks China is dumping, India should bring dumping cases. If India believes China is subsidizing, it should bring countervailing duty cases. If India believes China has IPR knockoffs, patents, copyrights, trademarks, you bring cases here against them. So each country has to bring its own cases. But the problem is the dispute resolution process within the WTO is so slow, and it's 3 years, and the panels take a long time. So the system is broken. Unfortunately, the WTO system at this point is largely irrelevant on dispute settlement with regard to China. So the point is we need a new remodeled trade regulation system to deal with China. However, under the laws of economics, China can't just subsidize forever. At some point, the government will stop subsidies. And when they tried to do that in the housing industry, some big housing companies in Hong Kong and on the mainland went under. So then the banks came back in to prop them back up. But our problem as the U.S. is that we have corporations that act in international trade against governments that are themselves corporations. State-owned enterprises in China, I mean, that's an unfair competition in and of itself, the steel industry, for example. So you really ask a good question, because the Washington consensus at the start was free trade, open markets was a good thing. China's perception is that the state controlling things is a good thing. Somewhere in the middle, we can have the Mumbai consensus, I think, where we can learn from India, and we can learn from each other that have a mix and have the government be helpful but not control everything. So that's really the goal. Maybe it's India can give us a lot of, that's one of the points we make in the book. We can learn from India, India can learn from us. But it can't, and we've learned now that China is not a responsible stakeholder, and they will keep subsidizing and dumping until someone stops them. With regard to Pakistan and that whole set of issues, I mean, that's been a historical legacy going back to Nixon and Kissinger and the bias against India that they had. And of course, Pakistan paved the route for Kissinger's famous visit to China to open up U.S.-China relations. So that whole legacy with Pakistan has continued, and the U.S. government has been helping Pakistan as well. I know that irritates a bunch of people in India, but it's a fact. So with regard to Pakistan, we hope the relations improve between India and Pakistan, and hope that situation gets better. So what was the first question?
Our quantum of trade, we set out an ambitious target of $800 billion, but it's less, sorry, 500, it's 1/4 of that.
Okay, so what can we do to fix that up is really the question. And that's another really good question. My overall view is we need a new trade agreement. We need a trade agreement between the U.S. and India. We also need a trade agreement between the U.S. and the U.K. The U.K. made a big mistake getting out of the European Union, in my opinion, and they're paying the price for it. So that leaves us, we should move forward. In my view, Trump made a huge mistake when on day one of his administration, he withdrew from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. And then China said, oh, good, we'll jump in. Well, we've opened the door. That was an unfortunate move. And I think we should resurrect the TPP. The problem is organized labor in the U.S. doesn't want that, so it probably won't happen. But there are steps that we could take one I mentioned, have duty-free entry for Indian goods would help on the trade side, okay? And that's what I think the U.S. should do. The big picture is this. After World War II, what did the United States do? The Marshall Plan. It helped Western Europe against the Soviet Union, the communists. It was viewed as a security matter. We should do the same thing now for India. We need a Marshall Plan for India, where the U.S. should help India, because the more we help India, the more we help ourselves, and because we have a common interest. Lord Palmerston, who was once the greatest foreign minister the UK ever had, said this: nations do not have permanent friends. Nations do not have permanent enemies. Nations only have permanent interests. What's in our interest is to align with India. We have a natural alliance, and so therefore it behooves us to help India all we can on trade, investment, and the other sectors. But you have a good point. The trade deficit is too large, and we should address it.
You wanted to ask, Mr. Sharma, here. Can we get the mics here? Then Ajit ji and the gentleman address.
I'll start from the point my friend just raised with you. In India, the normal citizen, like I'm a normal citizen of India, we feel that,
Like Arnab Goswami, normal.
I'll not say, American presidents or the American administration does have a double speak always. They champion the cause of human rights, and when the minorities are killed in Bangladesh, they don't speak a word, particularly Hindus, and in the light, because they have infused, they have manifested a chief executive officer of Bangladesh, which was prompted by American powers. And the displacement of Sheikh Hasina, who was a friend to India, was initiated from the land of USA. Secondly, that's the first question, why do they always do double speak? Not even a word. In India something happens, the whole of your Congress will start calling that India, there is a human rights violation.
Let's do a visit to Kashmir.
All that. Whereas he very rightly said, meeting of Prime Minister, hugging him, taking him into Philadelphia home, personal home. Thereafter he meets Muhammad Yunus. And America influences the IMF to give a $4 billion loan to Bangladesh, who are violating the human rights completely in Bangladesh. And the next is, the third question, he also three, I'll also ask three. Why American is wanting to invade Indian democracy through heavily financing to the various people, like George Soros said that I'll invest $1 billion to displace Narendra Modi. There are many others. And then in India, when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was displaced, your Consulate General in Hyderabad goes and meets Owaisi. Your representative of your guest city, your ambassador in India, they go and meet Omar Abdullah. Why does it happen repeatedly? What is the kind of a policy you have? You want to prompt the people who are against India, who think about bad for India. He very rightly said the Khalistanis he met, the Bangladeshi journalists he met, the Bangladesh chief executive officer who is a nominee of United States in Bangladesh. He hugged him and then prompted the IMF to give him a loan of $4 billion to resurrect Bangladesh. Why all these activities, double speak, showing the face that they are friends to India. We Indians feel they are no friends. You very rightly said just now that we take care of our interest. In our interest, don't dominate other democracies.
why don't you ask me an easy question? When did you stop beating your wife?
All easy questions in my view.
I think the thing should be more relevant to the president because, I mean, what he's trying to do is help and reach out and do good for the world. He's not looking at the interest of any country in particular. What he's doing is something very unique and reaching out to set up registries and support countries that are going through trouble. So I think for both of you, the questions would be very appropriate to the people who are actually ruling the United States and sitting in that position of power, because I think they are the ones who make those choices and decisions. So, I mean, you can only say what you feel, but that wouldn't enter.
America is more selfish.
Well, I wish he knew that to tell why they take those choices, but I don't think that is relevant to him personally, because that's not what he does.
The moment I enter, knowing that he is a versatile personality, he is everything.
No, that he is, but on a different trip altogether.
No, look, my philosophy is we need to build bridges to India. I'm trying to do the health bridge, I call health security issue, but we need trade, just that question we talked about before. We need investment. That's another way to build a bridge. We need defense cooperation, much more than we have now, and we need more cooperation with India in the Quad. A lot more we should do with India in the defense area. Technology is the other great frontier on make artificial intelligence, the data centers. We should do data centers here. My philosophy is we build bridges to India from the U.S. side. Now, we too supportive of Bangladesh. That's not my concern. My issue that I can do anything about at this point. Are we offending India on the human rights issues and sensibilities there? That's not my issue. My view is we need to build bridges, and it's an exciting time. We have the alliance. We should be building an alliance together. That's my philosophy.
I am Ajit, founder Khushi Gram. Basically, my question is, why don't we try to, as you said, that you are trying to create one water hole every district. So we should, I think, also push the governments and the authorities that no sewage or wastewater is put into the river, be it industrial waste or be it municipal waste.
Absolutely. And I think for that, you as citizens have to take that step forward. We can definitely request, and the implementation, media, very strong power, the political parties, the people in power should step up to make sure that it's integrated, because, as you said, we do have enough river bodies, we do have enough water. Why are we still struggling? Because of mismanagement. We don't save. After floods, we still don't have water. Where is the water going? So rainwater conservation is not there. So making sure that we implement these things, the people, because as we know, we are a democracy. And being a democracy, we the people have the right to, but also be the change you want to see. So independently, individually, in every area, let us start the movement. The government maybe will follow. They are. I'm not saying they're not, but keep in mind, our population is also that large. So with the size that we have and with the kind of resources, I think it's up to all of us to step up to implement and make that difference.
Sorry, I just want to add what my friend has just mentioned. In India, we love fixing ambitious targets. Previous, the question was asked about fixing $500 billion and then not reaching even after 5-7 years back, after the fixing, 1/4 of that. Similarly, we fix ambitious target in all the things, but we don't follow. We don't follow. We have best of the best technologies in all the things. When we can use, seawater for drinking or the sewage water for drinking, so there is no dearth of technology. There is no no dearth of good policies also. We have very good policy. But problem is the governance. We don't follow. We don't do that. I belong to a sports federation, which is Rowing Federation of India. Water is very important. We have a policy in sports that if you are a national body, you must have body at a state level, at district level. And if you don't have, your body cannot be, recognized. Without even thinking about policy, that is a generic policy, you cannot have lake and river in all the districts. But it is their policy. So they want people sitting over there, want us to write or make fake body at the district level, at the national level, at the state level. This is one. Secondly, if suppose I make it, nobody, check it. So this question is, more than a statement. Question is there any body, all organization like you and Dr. Fisher or Dr. Batra, we must have some, independent initiative to see which are the targets government has fixed and not following properly. Because we love fixing and formatting the targets. And it's not, my friend had just mentioned about double standards of USA. In India, we are not less than anybody. Let me tell you, we are not, we are not less than anybody. We are literate. When we go to bathroom, the kind of, we have in kitchen and bathroom, we have the best of the best gadgets. Where water saving is there, but while doing shaving, we will never switch off our, turn off taps. And if we are, saving water there, we'll waste water while washing our cars. This different standards. So anyway, I'm not getting into that. My request is that we must have somebody from private, from government or something to see whether, governance issue is there or not. That is the thing. And if you are doing, it's a great work. That's all. Thank you.
I appreciate your support, and I would like to say, it's not what the government can do for us. It's not what our country can do for us. What can we do for our country, right? I'm just here thinking on my personal level, what can I do, right? There's a very sweet story. There was a fire burning in the forest, and all the animals were running, everyone. There was this little bird that went to the river, and it picked the water, took the water in its beak and went to the fire and kept pouring with the little beak. So everybody started laughing and saying, what, are you crazy? You're gonna get burnt, you're gonna die, and you think a little beak can put off that fire? But the bird says, you know what, at least I tried. So with that, that's all I got to say. At least I'm trying. I'm not here questioning what others can do or want to do or will do. But you know what? I will. Well, I guess anybody.
One question for Dr. John. I'm glad you're making baby steps for water conservation. What about purity of drinking water for humans, not animals? There is a statistic which shows that 90% of hospital beds are because of waterborne diseases. So if you can provide pure drinking water, maybe there'll be less bone marrow transplant, which is also required.
Yes, that's the link, and I'm glad you raised that. Yes, more than 90% of the water is not actually treated, and if we had good drinking water, most of the diseases would not come. So for every child out there, when we're thinking about giving them good education, making them better in sports, how are you going to do that if you're not going to give them at least the basic, which is good drinking water? So let's start with getting good drinking water to them.
Hi, my name is Sapna. I wanted to actually ask a question to Dr. Fisher and to you. But before I ask the question, I wanted to say a simple thing. Thank you from all of us here. because neither one of you needed to do this, but you opt to do it. And there's something very graceful and beautiful of taking the time to do something outside of your own personal gain. For Dr. Fisher, my question was about China and accountability. How do you assume that there will be a global accountability for China as they're creating allies that, when you look at the global perspective, it's hard to imagine that China's allies are not going to eventually be used for their own personal gain. So my question was for accountability for China with you. And then for Sanjana, my question is I know water is a movement that you're interested in, but you're also in social activism about Asian Americans and the decriminalization of Asian Americans. So I was going to ask you what is maybe the inspiration for both of those, the reason that you're inspired to do work on both of those accounts.
Okay, on accountability for China, it seems to me that we now have, at least from the U.S. perspective, we're confronting the unholy alliance of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. And that's versus what I would call the democracies. So what we need to do as a group of democracies is expand the G7 into the G10 of democracies and have a democratic coalition to hold China accountable. So we need a broader coalition than we have. Obviously, we have NATO on one side already as an existing mechanism, but we need a stronger coalition of democracies, and we need force. You need to build up the military as a deterrent to bad things happening. As I mentioned before, it was a big mistake when Philippines kicked the U.S. out of Clark and Subic, those bases in the Philippines. Now they want us back. So they realize you need the U.S. So the U.S. has to be the essential superpower, in my opinion, organize this coalition of democracies. That's what I would like to see. And I think, as I say, we have a race against time here until 2049, when the centenary of China happens. And by then, I hope the U.S. can organize a coalition of democracies against them.
Well, as we all know, we are the world's largest democracy, and the U.S. is the world's richest democracy. And both of them are facing one problem, water. And I think somebody spoke about car washing and how even in the U.S. there are regulations not to waste water lawns, because there is a crisis. And if you've seen the fires, the California fires, all this is happening, of course, because of the lack of, I would say, organization, proper governance in certain areas. And if things are done better, it will definitely be, I think, overseen as a surgence of water everywhere. But personally, I know for a fact, only somebody who has suffered and not had water will know the value of water. I see so many people opening bottles, taking a swig, leaving it, and it's thrown. And trust me, I feel so pained when I see that. And I have personally taken those bottles, taken the water, and at least thrown them into plants so that it's not wasted. So, I got this main, I would say, idea to save water when I saw animals being killed and people dying. I saw this in Congo recently, where this child was, for one pot of water, he was just sitting there, and you could see the pain when he was looking at that pot of water. And then I see children, I don't want to say where, but everywhere. They run it, and the parents don't even stop them. And I tell them, oh my God, do you know what you are doing? That's precious. Years later, you can take a bag of notes and go to the store, and you might not be able to buy this bottle of water. That might be far more expensive than the gas we are buying today. Because you can live without gas. You can walk, you can cycle. but you cannot live without this precious water. So, yes, personal incidents, I think personal sensitivity comes when you've gone through pain and you ask me, I have been through pain in my life, and instead of just internalizing it and saying, my travesty, my tragedy, my trial, my tribulation, I said, let me do something to help and reach out where I can try and prevent that. And hopefully everybody will, because it's not always about me. Let's make it about us, and us.
Well, let me ask you a question. Thank you so much for sharing the last bit, because, for a problem for someone else becomes real only when it becomes relatable to them. And, before I ask a question, I want to make a comment, since I've got the mic and I've got everybody's attention. The problem of pollution that we face in India, especially in Delhi where we are sitting, I was speaking to a doctor, Dr. Arvind Kumar from Medanta. He's a pulmonologist, and he's done some research, and he brought to my attention that, a person in Delhi is smoking about 20 cigarettes a day without smoking, just by being present in Delhi. But imagine, it's not any adult. A child born in Delhi, the moment he comes out of the nursery, comes out of the hospital, is smoking 20 cigarettes a day. And that is probably why we are facing a challenge around cancer among young people. But my question to you, Dr. Bhatt, is, around the organ donation. And since you mentioned that you are someone who looks at a problem and tries to find a solution, I want to pick your brain on the 3 challenges that we face when we're talking of organ donation in India. One is the pressure from the family, who do not want to see you go through pain, and they do not want you to donate the organ because of the fear around pain that they imagine you would be going through. That can be probably solved with advocacy and knowledge sharing, creating awareness. But there are 2 other issues that we face, and one is there's a demand and supply gap between the organs needed today versus the donors available, which is creating, and we are a country which has a lot of poverty. This is leading to unscrupulous organ donations happening today. The second challenge is what you spoke about, the ethnic diversity of this country, and we have the religious beliefs around organs being donated. How do you think we can solve this problem in this country, which is very different from the environment that you have seen in your country?
I don't really feel qualified to address the Indian sensitivities on organ donation, which actually in the U.S. we have the same issue, particularly with African American communities, where it is felt, that it's somehow immoral that you should go to the grave with all your organs intact. So we have the same issue in the U.S. of spiritual, religious concern about the body, and that it shouldn't be touched. But there's an answer, which is if, for example, you were to die in an automobile accident, we had a situation where 5 different lives were saved with 5 different organs from that body. A heart, okay. So this heart now beats in another human being. So the spirit of that person lives on. And I think there's an interest and a spiritual interest in helping other people through the use of organs and organ donation. It's very emotional. You're right. I've been through this in the U.S., and a lot of people have a problem with it. But in fact, there's a movie about sort of this issue, and the family of the young lady who was lost, was actually felt very good about their daughter's heart beating in another person. So I think at the end of the day, there's an answer, which is we're here to help other people and save lives. So, but That's one question. The other was on the ethnic diversity. That's a huge problem. The other problem we have in the United States just on this issue is it's an ethical issue. How do you allocate the organs? For example, do you do it on the basis of the city you live in, the region you live in, because you know these people and you want to help them out, or medical need? Maybe some person's in a little bit worse shape, you know, in a different state. What's the ethical question here? Your friends versus the real patient in need. And that's another huge issue. So there's two worlds, what I call solid organ donation and fluid organ donation. Solid organ is heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas. Those ethical issues I just mentioned arise with those solid organs. With the fluid organ, marrow is an organ. It's a fluid organ that reproduces cells, red cells, white cells, and platelets, and it's just transfused and can give life to another person. And there's absolutely no issue there, I mean, on who gets it. If it's a match, you do it. It's be the match. You find the match. And so we have not had that problem on the marrow at all. But the issue of who gets the heart, who gets the kidney, you know, that has been a big issue in the United States. And it got UNOS, it's called United Network on Organ Sharing, UNOS, based in Richmond, Virginia, got them in trouble with the federal government, which subsidizes them. So their contract, in fact, is up for renewal. And this is one of the issues, is have they fairly managed the allocation of the organs once you, the other one you mentioned is on the imbalance between supply and demand. Well, that's a reflection of the ethical issue when you have such a huge demand. Kidneys, there's a huge waiting list for these organs. So how do you allocate to, who do you give it to is a big issue. And the answer is awareness and more supply. There's a lot of supply and demand. You got to get more organs out there. And we do it now on driver's licenses, you know, and we've tried in various ways. But, you know, there's so much medical progress that's been made on these transplants. You used to have what you call graft versus host disease, for example, with marrow, where the body would reject the new marrow. And now there's medications, drugs that fight the graft versus host disease, so that you can actually go forward and you won't have the body reject the transplant. So you made a huge amount of progress in that area. So you can do more, you can do a lot more than we used to be able to. And that's called graft versus host disease. Has now been largely licked. And so we can do more marrow donations due to the advances in technology and medical science. But you raise a set of issues that do arise and have to be addressed. But the one about, you know, 5 organs saving 5 lives, I think that's the answer. Is why would you not want to do that if you could?
Dr. John, I have a simple question for you.
I would request, I hope this is going to be the last question because we're running out of time, so it's going to be the last question.
Dr. John, I appreciate very greatly your statement that you're going to create 776 bowels in 800 districts of the country. All good luck, good funding support to you. But I just wanted to mention that since you're an Indian, you must be aware that we have 700,000 villages, and each village has a bauli, which is called basically a water body for the needs of the village. Unfortunately, over the years, urbanization has happened, and cities like Bangalore, which used to be called lakes, city of lakes, today has huge water problems. So in terms of our water shortages, India never had a problem. If you go to Daman and Diu, if you go to Goa, their bauli is where they harvest rainwater for months together. Because for 6 months they don't get water, and 6 months of monsoon they're able to harvest. So urbanization is a problem which is causing this issue. Otherwise, our 700,000 villages have a water body which the villagers have been using for centuries.
I totally agree with you, and this is exactly my point, unethical construction, which is not actually looking at the benefit of all is one of the biggest problems, but how we can overcome it, and again, like you said, we have got hundreds of thousands of water bodies. Let's start resurrecting them. Let's start recreating the avenue to make sure that the water is securely harvested, and of course, the underground water level should be higher. All these factors, let's not just leave it to the government. Personally, individually, every house can start doing that. So that's why it's important for us to take that step forward together. Every drop counts. And I have to tell you, great audience, and this has been a fantastic, fantastic time. Thanks to Dr. Batra and the Business World team. Thank you, Himani. It was great being here with you guys. Thank you.
I second that. Thank you.
I must congratulate Mr. Paul on behalf of BW Business World. I would like to extend great thanks to Dr. Bhat Fisher, Dr. Sanjana John, and of course Dr. Anurag Batra for such a delightful conversation. And I'm sure the audience in this room will be taking away a lot of insightful information from this session. Now going forward, we would like to do some felicitation.
And for which I would request Mr. Harbinder Narula, who is the CEO of BW Healthcare and Wellness, to please come on the stage and please do the honor.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now I would request Mr. Ruhul Amin to please come on the stage and please do the honors. Now may I please request Dr. Anurag Batra to please come here for one group picture, sir.
I want to take this opportunity for a quick announcement. We have the Experiential Marketing Awards right after this in the same venue. Some great people here, so please stay back after a cup of tea and come back to this room.
Last time when you were 4 seasons you wrote, or 4 seasons you wrote, I went to read that. Okay, you went to March. 5 years.
We can all step outside for a cup of tea and have our conversations outside, and then please come back. I want some of you to go on stage.
So you are the son, yes. Shall I hold it for you? Thank you so much, and absolute pleasure. I learned from the best. You know, I have this blessing. Yes, very well. And I've been addressing this every week. So getting to understand the need for future understand. You're doing everything for concerning art and like starting the basics. सब ऐसा ही है देखो आप अपने लिए करो
I need lawyers in New York. You're in New York.
Such a pleasure. Keep in touch to work on something good together.
We wanted to do something about we're going to.
I was fortunate that what was in the first
Thank the full parcel.
that's the thing, I'm trying, again, it's about the way that somebody has taken a swing and the somehow taken a swing and then I can see it. That's
Money? Change over the Do that again, I didn't get the fix. Ivani, can you announce? Dr. Fisher?
keep in touch so that they will.
I mean, Dr. Fisher and Sanjana,
Yes, I'm coming.
can we go out because then there is another stage.
Yes, yes. I hope that's good. So I will you sign it. Please do sign it. I would love that. Always most sign it. Yes, I'm not. And you put it, there is a pen.
We can do this outside, eh?
Yes, we will. Come out, we will take
I think
it
it's
right
right
out.
Come do it. रंजन जी बाहर आ जाए फिर हम आ जाएंगे तो बता Ivani was saying other than then we'll do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, and keep in touch.